But right now, the leader of Stevenage Borough Council has stepped in to try and stop a 17th century cottage from being demolished. Plans by a local developer to knock down the cottage in Fisher's Green were rejected by the council in August, but recent changes to planning legislation mean that unless a building is listed, the council effectively has no say in the matter. Well, we can now speak to both Labour councillor Sharon Taylor, leader of Stevenage Borough Council, and the developer Craig Scudder, who wants to build the houses there. Good morning to you both, Sharon and Craig.
Good morning, Stuart.
Good morning. Right, let's start with you, Sharon, and tell us why you decided to get involved in this issue.
Well, I think the worrying thing here is we have so few historic buildings in Stevenage. This one is a particularly lovely-looking cottage on one of our old village commons in Stevenage. The planning committee decided that it shouldn't be demolished, that it should stay there. We all agree with that. And now, of course, the decision has been taken out of the hands of locally elected people because of the legislation that the government put through in 2015. Mr. Scudder can use that legislation, of course. That's his right. It is the law. But we just feel that for one of the very few 17th century cottages we have in the town to be destroyed in this way is tragic. And you can never get these places back, Stuart. Once that's pulled down, we'll never have that 17th century history and historic building there again. And this is, I think it's really tragic for the local people who have been campaigning for this cottage to be retained. The councillors agreed with them. They voted for that. And now, because of this government legislation, the decision is taken out of our hands. That seems completely wrong to me.
Craig, there we are then. The decision taken out of locally elected people's hands. Why do you want to build there? Could you just leave that cottage just there and build around it somehow?
Stuart, can I first just say a couple of things to clear this matter up? Because firstly, can I ask either or both of you, do you own your own homes or do you rent your homes?
Well, I'm not sure if it's relevant for me to answer, but Sharon can certainly answer.
Sharon,
I rent my home.
You rent, okay. So can I just ask you, before you took on your rental agreement, did you visit the property?
Mr. Scudder, I don't live in a 17th century cottage.
I don't know how this
is relevant.
If we're going to have a discussion here, the point I'm trying to make here is, Sharon, that 20 members of the council or thereabouts, I was at the council meeting when you went against your own planning officer's recommendations.
That's the point of having locally elected. Sorry, okay, but you carry on.
Sharon, no, it's all right. So, Craig, you finish saying your piece, and then Sharon, you can come back on it. All right.
I will.
Thank you very much. We have one set of rules here, right? So none of the councillors that voted on this have actually visited the cottage. Your planning officer, whose recommendations the planning committee went against, has visited the cottage on multiple occasions, as have two professional bodies have also visited the cottage, and the conclusion by Historic England, by both their archaeologists, was that it no longer represents a good example of a 17th century house. It's been extensively altered, resulting in a significant proportion of its early historic fabric being lost. Now, this is like campaigning to have Bruce Forsyth brought back as the host of Strictly Come Dancing. We might all want that to happen, but it isn't going to happen. That boat has sailed.
Craig,
this is no longer a 17th century cottage.
I need to.
If you visited it, you would know that.
Craig, I need to let Sharon come back on this. It's like bringing Bruce Forsyth back to Strictly Come Dancing. What do you have to say to Craig's argument?
Yeah, I think Craig's totally missing the point here. The point is that although Historic England will measure whether something can be listed against everything in England, we're looking at this in the context of Stevenage. So most of the housing in Stevenage was built after 1950 because we're a new town. So the historic cottages that we have are incredibly valuable to us in the context of our own town. And, of course, that's why our councillors, who are elected by people to represent their views, took the decision that they didn't support the officer's recommendation. And the officer's recommendation was done in good faith because of what Historic England had said. our councillors took the view that because of the context of Stevenage, because we're a new town and these buildings are precious to us, that they felt they did not want to agree to the demolition of this cottage.
But Sharon, can I just jump in?
And I do want to say, I do know this cottage very well. Simon's Green is my own ward. I represent Simon's Green. I know the cottage very well. I know my ward very well. In my ward, we have these two beautiful historic old commons, and Fisher's Green is one of them. The cottage is on Fisher's Green. It's part of the character of that area, and it's a tragic loss to me to pull this cottage down. OK,
I understand, and I can hear your passion for the cottage. Just before we come back to Craig, I just want to make one point. You know, we are screaming out for new houses. Whenever this seems to happen, there seems to be some objection. You know, these developers, they need to build homes.
I absolutely support that we need new homes, Stuart, and we have, as a council, we've built hundreds of homes in the last couple of years, and we've supported developers in other places in the town, and we will continue to do so. But where will it end? Where will it end? Because, you know, there's one cottage, it could be a phone box next, you know, we can't tear down this... I think this is a special case, and I think a 17th century cottage, you know, in the context of Stevenage, is definitely a special case.
But Historic England don't want it, that's the thing. If they don't want it...
Well, as I explained, Historic England look at the listing of buildings against the national criteria, so they'll look at it in the context of what happens all over England. We don't...
Can I ask a question? Sorry, can I ask a question?
Issue.
Craig, come back. I was just going to ask you, Craig, you know, listen, you've heard about the cottage, you've heard about the situation, you know Stevenage town. Can you understand why there is some attachment to this building? Is there no way around this?
Well, listen, I could. I mean, firstly, Sharon, you're actually misrepresenting how many 17th century timber frame buildings are listed in Stevenage. There are 23. The vast majority are within 1 mile of this cottage. Now, you don't know that because you probably haven't done your homework. In the same way that you haven't visited this cottage. So my question to you is, if you are going against Historic England's recommendation here, who are you taking your advice from? What gives you the impression that this is a 17th century cottage when the archaeological study I had commissioned by Albion Archaeology and the beams study that you had commissioned yourself, which was actually done by looking at photos on Rightmove.
Okay, Craig. Okay, let's Sharon come back on this. Sharon.
Craig, I know Simon's Green very well indeed. I've represented the area for 21 years. I know there are other...
The question is, who are you taking your advice from about this being a 17th century cottage?
Craig, can you let Sharon answer the question, Craig, please?
Who are you taking your advice from that this is a 17th century cottage?
You're talking over me now, Craig. You asked me not to do it to you, and I didn't.
Okay, Craig. Sharon, just answer Craig's question there, though. He just wants to know, you know...
We take our advice. Our job is to represent the people of Stevenage and their views. And we totally agree with the people that have been talking to us, and I agree with the people in my ward of Simon's Green and other people in Stevenage who have made representations to us, that this is an act of historic vandalism to pull this cottage down, and we want to support them in doing all we can. I understand that the legislation is against us here, and we probably won't win this battle, but we want to do all we can to try and help people to preserve what is a very beautiful cottage on one of our historic commons in Stevenage.
But Sharon, as we've just heard, there are 24 other ones that are listed within a mile of this cottage, yeah?
That's in the old town of Stevenage, which is a different area. This area was a rural area of Stevenage.
Still Stevenage?
They're not in the high street of Stevenage.
Okay.
And in Stevenage High Street, there are some historic cottages, but... in most of Stevenage, most of the property was built after 1950. So in the context of Stevenage, this cottage is particularly valuable, and that's my argument and has been all the way through. And, you know, for the decision on this to be taken out of the hands of people who've been elected locally to represent the views of Stevenage people, which is what we are as councillors, seems to me completely wrong.
Sharon, are you a bit annoyed that literally maybe the fact that central government are going over your head to push things through on this? Is this what this is all about?
But the law is the law, Stuart. You know, they've passed this law, and Mr. Scudder can take advantage of that if he wishes. But we just feel very strongly that this is a Stevenage issue. This is about what we have in Stevenage and what we want to try and protect for Stevenage. And that's why we're fighting this battle, because we think this is really important in the context of our town and the way that it was developed, that we want to guarantee for the future that buildings will be protected. Going forward, what we will be trying to do is look at all of the historic buildings in the town and trying to build as much protection around them as we can.
Craig, I just want to come to you finally, and obviously you're hearing the situation. I know you're not a big developer, but could you see situations like this becoming more commonplace?
I can. What really bemused me from being in the council meeting was that, there has been a social media campaign to try and save this cottage, which was started by my neighbour, who was a bit perturbed when I bought the cottage and found out that she'd stolen some of the garden.
Okay, let's leave that there. We don't know about that one, so we'll leave that there, Craig. But listen, I just want to make Craig, just stop a second. I just want to ask you.
One point.
Okay, make your point.
If this was such an historic cottage, although the 3 commissioned reports beg to differ, and it was so important to the local community, why didn't the planning committee come and see it? I am told that is common practice when they have any reservations about a planning application, and I fully expected them to ask to come and see it, and they didn't.
Listen, Craig, we're going to have to leave it there. We're going to have to leave it there. Craig and Sharon, thank you very much. And as you can hear, Sharon, very, very passionate about that cottage as well, and obviously not wanting to see it destroyed. Ooh, what do you reckon to that? 81333. Don't forget, of course, you can start your text with 3CR this morning. Passions running very high. I'd love to hear from you this morning if you live in Stevenage. If you pass this cottage, if you feel the strength of feeling about it that Sharon does, or if you're one of these people who are like, well, no, not really. We've got 24 lovely listed cottages in the old town. We didn't really even know about this one, and naturally we won't miss it. And Stevenage needs new and more affordable homes. Let us know what you think this morning. 81333. Start your message with 3CR.